A new twist in the Trayvon Martin case being reported today in an Orlando newspaper. It has to do with screams on the 911 calls. NBC's Kerry Sanders is live in downtown Miami, where a protest is planned today. And Kerry clearly checking his BlackBerry to see what's happening there. Hey, Kerry, what is the newspaper reporting?
Okay, first of all, the Orlando Sentinel reached out to two experts, audio experts who can listen to 911 calls or other sorts of recordings and make conclusions based on those. Now, we've spoken to both of those experts. The paper said that what they discovered, and now that I've spoken to both experts, we now know that they came to the conclusion that the screams on the 911 call were those of somebody other than Zimmerman. Again, this is what the experts are telling NBC News. First of all, Tom Owen, who's a forensic consultant, his company is Owen Forensic Service. He uses a technology which is similar, he claims, to what the NSA and the CIA do. He gets a sample of George Zimmerman's voice. He did that because George Zimmerman dialed into 911, identified himself. So he has that. He takes that and puts it in a computer, and he eliminates all of other conversations from, in this case, the 911 operator, and he butts it all together. Then he takes the scream sound and puts that on the same timeline on the computer and puts it into a program which is called Easy Voice Biometrics. And it sounds a little high-techy, but he says that it has been used for quite some time to get into the details of determining whether that is indeed somebody's voice. He says the analysis comes back with a 99% certainty that the voice heard in that scream is not George Zimmerman's voice. George Zimmerman, of course, is the white Hispanic man who had the gun, who shot 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Now, another expert, also contacted by the Orlando Sentinel, now also contacted by NBC News, says that he uses a different technology. His name is Ed Primo. What he does is he took the audio recording with that scream from a website. He took that and he began to analyze the highs and the lows and the pitches of the voice. It's a little bit different of a technique, and sometimes not accepted in court, other times accepted in courts. And he says based on the pitch and the range of the voice, it could not be somebody who was 30 years or older. It would be somebody who was younger. But he does not conclude that it is Trayvon's voice. He simply says that the voice analysis he does is somebody who is younger than George Zimmerman. So that is the analysis, and of course, this is all outside of law enforcement. This was initiated by the newspaper, the Orlando Sentinel, and now we have spoken to those experts, and now you've got the details of what they have concluded, Alex.
No, and this is the first time we're hearing the details in such detail. So, Kerry, just to confirm, these are two independent sources that have both concluded, but not irrefutably, neither of them have reached 100% confirmation that the voice on the tape is not George Zimmerman's, but it is probably.
Yes, exactly. And again, yes, you got it. And remember, these are the screams that are heard before the shots. And this is when there was allegedly some sort of confrontation between the two. Remember, in this very volatile situation, there's going to be a large crowd of people coming out here to protest again today about this. There is no eyewitness who saw exactly what happened. George Zimmerman has said through his attorney he was simply defending himself, that 17-year-old Trayvon Martin attacked him. Of course, the belief among Trayvon Martin's family and so many others is that George Zimmerman, because we've heard those 911 calls, told the operator that he was pursuing him, he was following him, even though the operator told him to turn around and that is not his job to back away, then got into some sort of confrontation. A shot was fired and a 17-year-old was shot and killed.
Kerry, one more thing. It's my understanding that because we don't have Trayvon Martin's voice recorded somewhere, you can't say not only is this not George Zimmerman's voice, but you cannot conclusively say that it is the screaming voice of Trayvon Martin.
Exactly, because remember, this is an analysis where they are matching details. And so they have George Zimmerman's voice for both tests and two different technologies, and they can conclude certain details based on that. But absent a recording of Trayvon Martin's voice, they cannot reach the conclusion, although it's believed those were the only two people there. And so were it not to be George Zimmerman's voice, the only person left there at that scene would have been Trayvon Martin.
Joining me now is Tom Owen, one of the voice identification experts quoted in the Orlando Sentinel report. He analyzed that 911 tape. Tom, thank you for joining me on the phone. Let me ask you, what did your test conclude?
Alex, the test concluded that it's not the voice of Mr. Zimmerman.
When you say that, Tom, tell me how you came to that conclusion, and if you can give a percentage of certainty, I would love to hear that.
Well, I came to that conclusion first by listening, and then secondly by using a program called Easy Voice Biometrics, which is a biometric program very similar to what the NSA and CIA and FBI use for following terrorists through their voice and so forth. And it's not brand new technology, but it's recently become available and quite commonplace because of 911 and so forth, 9/11 and so forth. Every country in the world is utilizing this technology to follow terrorists and drug cartels and so forth.
So, Tom, if every country is using this, is this the kind of summary evidence that could be admissible in court?
Yes. I just recently testified in a murder trial in Connecticut, State versus Davalu, where it was a 911 call, and I was able to identify her voice as the person making the 911 call.
Okay. Tom, are you able to conclude that it is the voice of Trayvon Martin, if not by your technical analysis, because George Zimmerman has said there were two people present at the incident, himself and Trayvon Martin?
Well, I have nothing to compare to Trayvon Martin. George Zimmerman identified himself on a 911 call. In that respect, there's no question about who that made the George Zimmerman 911 call. As far as whether or not it's Trayvon Martin, I can't say one way or the other. I don't have anything to compare. How
about accuracy of your tests? How successful have you been in reaching these conclusions that then don't get challenged?
Well, the software itself, is extremely accurate. I've run it against 300 voices, testing 300 voices, and it was better than 99% in all cases. And there has to be a minimum criteria in terms of the quality of the audio. The Zimmerman call has a signal-to-noise ratio of 26 dB, which is very high in our world, in the forensic audio world.
Which means what, Tom, that it is very accurate?
It's very clear.
Very clear.
It's very clear. Unlike a lot of 911 calls, they're not so clear.
Mm-hmm. Tom, were you asked to perform these tests?
Yes, Jeff Weiner at the Orlando Sentinel asked me about the science generally, because I've been around. I've been doing it for 30 years, and then I let him know that possibly he may want to look at the biometric side of it and so forth, and he asked me if I would do that, and I agreed to do that, and that's what you hear on the newspaper's website. I prepared special tapes, and you can go and download those tapes if you wish.
Tom, are you ever contacted by police departments? Did the Sanford Police Department contact you?
No, not that I'm aware of.
They have not contacted you. Would it be unusual for a police department to contact someone with your area of expertise and have them analyze 911 tapes like that in conducting their investigation?
No, I did the Sheila Davalu case in Connecticut for a police department, for the prosecutor's office.
Okay. I'm curious if this is a large group of people that conduct these types of specific inquiries. I mean, have you heard of anybody in your field being approached by the Sanford Police Department asked to conduct voice identification analysis?
No, not to my knowledge.
Are there a lot of people who do this? I mean, would you be the guy in the area to do this?
Let's say I have the most longevity in this field. It's a very long process. It's a 2-year mentoring program, and you have to do hundreds of cases and pass both written test and practical test and so forth. So there's 9 identification examiner certified in the world.
Okay, Tom, start to finish, from getting access to the 911 tapes to coming to the conclusion, how long did that take?
Couple days.
Couple days of what? You working full time on this, or do you have to?
Pretty much so.
So hours. How long did you listen to these tapes and go through the analysis?
It took me about 4 hours to prepare the tapes so that they can be used in the program, and of course I was listening to them at the time I was doing that. And I don't know, I would say probably 10 or 15 hours total.
And that would be typical for a tape with this sort of length of time that you're able to analyze?
Yes.
Okay. Tom Owen, I want to thank you very much for speaking with us, particularly since this is one of the most important things to come out of this case, certainly in the last 24 hours, if not prior to that. Tom, thank you.
Hey, everyone. So you just heard two separate MSNBC reports, both having to do with the voice analysis of the 911 calls. It does not take a rocket scientist to know that that was not the voice of George Zimmerman. My concern with this, and I've said this early on when I first started posting videos on this story, is that the police, the Sanford police, botched the crime scene. They never collected evidence at all pertaining to this murder. And then now we see that the Sanford police are responsible for leaking information in regards to Trayvon Martin's disciplinary actions at school. So they have shown that they have a vested interest in smearing the name and the reputation of the victim here. And it is all in an effort to cleanse their hands of any wrongdoing. We've seen it in rape cases, we've seen it in murder cases, where the victim is exposed to the media, to the public, in an effort, a desperate effort, to sway opinion and to sway perception. I don't trust the Sanford Police Department. I don't trust the state attorney's office. I don't even trust the DOJ or the FBI to take care of this case and handle it properly. There is a ton of forensic evidence that is just gone. There was no alcohol or drug test given to George Zimmerman. There was no ballistics test done on George Zimmerman. From the video of him going into the police station to be questioned or whatever they were doing with him, there's no evidence on his face, on his clothes, that there was a major struggle between him and Trayvon Martin. He doesn't look disheveled. He doesn't look uneasy. He looks as if he is walking through the park. This is a walk of ease for George Zimmerman. Not a worry, not a care in the world. I have watched tons of criminal cases being prosecuted. And when there is very little evidence against the perpetrator, and when the perception of the victim has been swayed or tainted to a point where it could influence decisions, many times the defendant will walk. The day that George Zimmerman walks out of a courtroom should be the last day he walks. Most people know that that was a cold-blooded murder, and it was not done in self-defense.